first one is about UNESCO. Okay, and there was an event that happened. Basically, Hyderabad was listed as one of the UNESCO creative city, and apart from Hyderabad, even Mumbai was also allocated certain category in UNESCO creative cities. So there is a kind of category called UNESCO creative cities. So this is like UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Like UNESCO has number of programs like World Heritage Sites, Man and Biosphere Reserves, geological parks and all. So part of that, they also have UNESCO creative cities. So for that, Hyderabad and Mumbai for the first time selected in 2019. So that's why this was in news. So now we'll solve this question. Okay. So match the following cities that are recognized by UNESCO network of creative cities with their associated categories. First one, Hyderabad, UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy. Second one, Mumbai, UNESCO Creative City of Media Arts. Third one, Varanasi, UNESCO Creative Cities of Music. And then Jaipur, UNESCO Creative City of Literature. Okay, so here one thing is for sure, like you all know Hyderabad, one thing if it is famous, it is for biryani and all the food. So obviously it will be famous for this gastronomy. So the first option is correct. Second option is slightly tricky here because Mumbai, we all know it is famous for films, the Bollywood, but it is not under media arts. So there is separate category under creative cities called films. So Mumbai was selected under UNESCO Creative City of Film. So that's why second one is wrong here. And third one, Varanasi, yes, it is correct. It is selected for UNESCO Creative City of Music. So here 1 and 3 are the right options, and 2 and 4. Jaipur, we might. This is also kind of trap for you because Jaipur we normally associate with literature festival, and we tend to select literature, but that is not true. Jaipur is associated with another category. So here only 1 and 3 are correct. So the answer is D. So now we'll see this in detail. Yes, as I said, the context is that cities of Mumbai and Hyderabad are joining the UNESCO network of creative cities. And Mumbai for the creative city of film, and Hyderabad for the creative city of gastronomy. And other cities that were added well before this are Chennai and Varanasi for music. Always remember Varanasi and Chennai, both for music, and Jaipur for crafts and folk arts. Because there are number of crafts like some metal crafts they make, which are very famous in Rajasthan, and similarly they are very famous for certain dances. So that is why it is famous for crafts and folk arts. So try to remember this way, you'll be able to remember it in long term. So that is about creative cities. And then every year, like on 31st October, they celebrate, UNESCO celebrate World Cities Day. So basically in this occasion only they have allocated these cities as part of 66 other cities. And what is this UNESCO Creative Cities Network is basically to promote cooperation between the cities, okay, by identifying that creativity factor as the strategic cooperation. For example, if Hyderabad is selected for gastronomy, then it can share the best practices related to food with other cities. Similarly, if one is selected for music, then they can share. This way, cities can grow. So this is the objective of this program, that is UNESCO Creative Cities Network. So under this network, there are 7 fields under which these cities will be selected. So those are first one, crafts and folk arts, second one, media arts, third, film, fourth, design, and then gastronomy, literature, and music. Okay. So far, we are selected in creative, crafts and folk arts, film, gastronomy, and music. Okay. So that is about this. And then it is also, this network is basically also about pushing the Sustainable Development Goal 11. Okay, that also you have to remember. So SDG 11 deals with sustainable cities and communities. So part of that, this is also there. And then part of this, we'll know what is UNESCO. First of all, what are the functions and all, because UNESCO is very important this year for 2 reasons. One, because of these kind of initiatives. Second thing, our Donald Trump withdrew from this organization also. Like he is on a record right now on withdrawing from the United Nations organizations. So he withdrew from World Health Organization. He withdrew from Paris Climate Change Deal. He withdrew from UNESCO. He withdrew from even UNHRC, that is Human Rights Council. So that is why wherever US withdraws, all these organizations will become important for this year. So I've noted them down in the further slide. So I will show you that anyway, but these are the important. So that's why we will also focus on UNESCO part of it. So if you see, UNESCO is specialized agency of UN, and basically its intention is to build peace among the communities or the countries through cooperation in education, science, and culture. So that is what UNESCO stands for: United Nations Council for Education, Science, and Culture. And it is headquartered in Paris. This is important fact you have to remember. It is headquartered in Paris, and it is also part of a group called UN Sustainable Development Group. So in this group, certain organizations will be grouped, and they will focus also on sustainable development goals apart from their mandate. And as I said, Israel and US have withdrew from UNESCO in 2019. And the important programs that UNESCO made in this year are: first thing, Education 2030 Framework for Action. This is also called as Incheon Declaration, and this Incheon is a city in South Korea. So there, this declaration was made to achieve the Global Education Agenda 2030 agenda, that is part of Sustainable Development Goals. And then we'll see different important programs that are launched by UNESCO. So the first one is World Heritage Conventions and Lists. Okay, so under this there is a convention, and under that we'll recognize World Heritage Sites. Okay, so like India has right now about 38 World Heritage Sites, and out of them one is mixed, 30 cultural and 7 natural one. So these are like World Heritage Sites. For example, you have this Hampi. Hampi is recognized as a World Heritage Site. So this is also very important. You also have to know on what basis this World Heritage Sites are recognized. And next thing, man and biosphere reserves. This is also very important because they identify in every country what are the areas which need international recognition and protection, and where man and biosphere both can play an equal role in protection. So part of that, we have 18 reserves. I mean, India has 18 reserves of the entire world program, and 11 are recognized internationally under man and biosphere reserve. Okay, that part is missing because of the slide margin. So if you remember this, recently the last man and biosphere program that we have got is for a reserve in Sikkim. This was very recent, like in 2016 or 17 we got an national park reserve being selected as a part of man and biosphere. So try to see the list once, what are these 18, because that is also important to remember. Okay, so next thing is, next other important programs are like International Hydrological Program, World Water Assessment Program, and International Basic Sciences Program. So these are another important initiatives of UNESCO. And reports, the reports that are mainly published by UNESCO which are globally famous are: first thing is Global Education Monitoring Report. So this every year they publish, like based on like how the education is in different countries, and they gave certain ranking also. And then you have the famous McBride report. There was a mains question also on this McBride report, and like everyone got surprised because no one knows even that name, and many have left that question also. But such an important report, that is why you at least need to know the basic information about McBride report. And then you have recently an UNESCO report published exclusively for India, that is Children with Disabilities. So in that that also you are, at least you need to know that these are the reports published by UNESCO. So now, as I said, the other organizations that you need to focus for this year are UNHRC, that is United Nations Human Rights Council, and then World Trade Organization. In that World Trade Organization also, dispute settlement body is very, very important, because US is constantly opposing the appointment to dispute settlement body. So because of that, because actual strength is very large, and right now there is only one member in this dispute settlement body, and he is also going to expire around 2021. So with that, all the disputes are getting stuck. So that effectively means no one is going to WTO. That means WTO cannot enforce its own rules. So that's why there is a bigger threat on working of WTO because of this DSP. So try to know more about DSP, like dispute settlement body, what it is, how many people are appointed, what is the process of appointment and all. And then you have the famous World Health Organization. You already know that US withdrew, so part of that, know the structure and functions. And then UN Environment Program is also very, very important. And UN Environment Program recent summit happened in Africa continent, so try to know that. And they have, India has suggested for banning plastics for the first time. So that's why part of that, the declaration is also very important. And similarly, they made certain declarations in UNEP. And also UNEP releases certain reports, like global environment report, and there is some feasibility report. So try to see that reports. What are the report names? And then climate change, especially the COP summits, like Conference of Party summits. So Paris deal was done in COP 15, and then we had two other summits. And so see last summit where happened, and what are the outcome of that summit. At least last summit is important, and you need to know where the next summit is going to happen. These two are important. Okay. Okay. So having done that, we'll see the second one. So if you remember, we have already discussed some part of the cyclones, like the theory part, how the cyclones are formed, what are the conditions and all. So now we will see like how the cyclones are named actually, because that is also very important. And there was a recently a major change that happened with respect to the naming process. So that's why this question. Okay. So the second question, consider the following statements with respect to cyclone naming in Indian Ocean. So the first statement, the regional specialized meteorological center gives a tropical cyclone an identification from the names list. The identification system covers both Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. And then the new list comprises 13 names of cyclones, each for 13 member countries. Totaling of 169 is approved recently and in use now. If a cyclone is particularly deadly or costly, the name is retired and never used again for any other hurricane or cyclone. So now please do mark your answer, and then we will see the right answer for this. Okay, so here for the purpose of for making easy for you to remember the statements, I've made every statement as correct. So here all the three are correct, and usually if you didn't update your knowledge, you would have got the second one as wrong, because usually we think it is the 8 countries and each country gives 8 names, so total 64, but that was an outdated. So now we have updated to this latest one, so that's why second one is also correct. And this regional specialized meteorological center is nothing but an IMD center which is in New Delhi, that covers giving names for entire North Indian Ocean, for both Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. If any cyclone happens, this is the center that gives names based on how we will see it in the later part of the slides. But you can remember, like all the three statements are correct here. So the answer is A. So now we'll see this in detail. So first thing is why cyclones are named. First of all, because cyclones are mainly named because it makes easier for the media to report. So because of that reporting, it increases the community preparedness. Next thing, names are easy to remember. Now imagine like if suppose cyclone 1, cyclone 2, cyclone 3 or some number is given, then it will be difficult. And third thing, it will also make easy for the people to understand, because it is very important at the in the part of disaster mitigation and disaster preparedness. Because in India and other countries, in at least South Asia, the literacy rate is very less. So if you identify cyclone by a name which is relevant to that area, then they can mostly associate with it and prepare. And also not to confuse the public with any other tribe. Like for example, if there are two cyclones generating in one in Arabian Sea, one is Bengal, Bay of Bengal. So not to confuse them, we name them with the separate names. So this is also important part of mains also. So that's why you need to know why the cyclones are named. What is the purpose? Second thing, now who names the cyclones? So the first thing is like the World Meteorological Organization. Under that you have UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, UNESCAP. Okay, so under this World Meteorological Organization and UNESCAP basically agreed in 2004 to give this responsibility of naming the cyclones to certain regional organizations. So that was agreed under this WMO. So under that, the IMD, that is Indian Meteorological Department, has a center called Regional Specialized Meteorological Center, RSMC, in New Delhi. So this task was assigned to New Delhi for the entire North Indian Ocean. So New Delhi gives a name from a list. So this is how they will name for both the cyclones in Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. Now we'll see how that list is named. So this is the like historical thing. Like earlier, this regional country used to cover only 8 countries of South Asia. Basically India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives, Myanmar, Oman, Sri Lanka and Thailand. Okay, and 18 to 8, 64 used to come. And the name suggestion conditions are basically, first thing, the name should be short and should be readily understood when broadcast. Second thing, the names not to be culturally sensitive or should not convey any unintended and potentially inflammatory meaning. Okay, because people are very sensitive about the cultural practices, you can't give a name which might hurt them. And also the name should be politically and culturally neutral. Okay, and the main important thing is maximum permissible length of a cyclone name is 8 letters. So you can't have a cyclone, the lettering wording more than 8 letters. This is something you have to remember, because this might be a key statement in a question. And next thing, if it is dead, if the cyclone causes a significant damage like havoc, it will have certain negative sentiments, so you can't have again a new cyclone with that name, so that will be removed. If not, you can again recirculate the names, except if it is causes a huge damage. So now we will see what is the naming process. So like if you see in North India, this is the earlier list. So like 8 countries are there here, and these are the columns. So basically every country will give 8 names. Similarly, 8 countries will give 8 names. So it will become 64 in this way. And you will go one by one from the order. Like for example, Bangladesh. Okay, now we will see with the list 8. Okay, here if you see, like funny, in the year it will start with the funny first, and then it will go to Vayu, and then it will go to Hika, and then Kyar, Maha, Bulbul, Pavan and Amphan. So this way that entire column will be finished. So once that is done, then it will go to the next column. So this is how it used to exist till now. But in 2019, the last cyclone under this category was Amphan. So after Amphan, a new system came, because we finished all the names in this entire list. So now we'll see this new list. So this is the new list, and this list has 13 countries. Okay, that is why I said now 8 we have upgraded to 13 countries. So this New Delhi center now covers 13 countries, and the extra countries that were included mainly are from Saudi Arabia Peninsula, that are Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and then UAE and Yemen. So these were the extra countries, and each country will give again same 13 names. So 13 into 13, 169. So that's why very recently we have started the cyclone with cyclone Nisarga. Okay, and next cyclone name will be Gati. So this at least you have to remember. So till now Nisarga has completed. If at all a next cyclone comes, that name will be Gati. So that you have to remember the next cyclone name. So this is the same thing as I said, the same explanation. So that is this, like you have to remember this fact, like from 8 we have increased to 13. So it will go by column wise, like once a column is completed it will go to the next. And you already know the conditions, like the name shouldn't be more than 8 letters, and it should be politically neutral. And if it is a name of a cyclone that already caused a severe havoc, then it shouldn't be used. So these are the kind of conditions. So now we'll go with the third topic. So here you see the question. Consider the following statements with respect to unemployment calculation process. Okay, first one. NSSO has recently started publishing periodic labor force survey report that replaced earlier employment unemployment survey. Okay. Second one. Labor force refers to people who are currently employed. It doesn't include people who are actively looking for employment. Third one, unemployment rate refers to the ratio of total unemployed people to the labor force of that country. So which of the above statements are correct? So now try to mark your answer, and then we will see the right answer for this. So here again, you all know that why this question was in news, because there was a famous survey done by PLFS report, which said the unemployment was at the highest. So at that time, it brought a huge controversy. So that is why there were certain terms that are related to like labor force, workforce, what is unemployment rate, what is unemployment to population ratio. So these are certain terms, technical terms, which we need to know. So I've covered that in the slide. So first we'll see the answer here. So here the first statement is correct, and the third statement is also correct. So the problem is with the second one, because labor force actually includes the people who are actively looking for employment. So labor force means who are already employed, and also the people who are looking actively for the employment. That is labor force. So that's why the second option is wrong here. So you can remove the second, then the answer is 1 and 3. That is D. So now we'll see the solution. So as I said, this Center for Monitoring Yes. So Center for Monitoring Indian Economy has revealed this India's unemployment rate to 8.5%, and that is why this was in news. And now we'll see the different important terms. Like the first, labor force. Labor force is about who are employed and who are looking out for work. It includes both. This is the main difference with respect to workforce. Whereas workforce means who are already in the work. Okay. Those it doesn't include the category of people who are looking for employment. So it only deals with who are already in the work, that is in the employment. So that's why, as I said, the labor force doesn't include people who are not looking for work, and labor force is larger set that includes both employed and unemployed who are actively looking for work. So whereas workforce deals with only people who are employed. That is why workforce depicts the real current employment scenario in an economy. So workforce is important to know how much employment we have, whereas labor force is important to know how much the people are willing to work. And then you have unemployed. Unemployed is basically something that you can get by subtracting workforce from the labor force. So labor force minus workforce is equal to unemployed. Because what I said, labor force is something about who are already employed and people who are looking for employment. And then workforce is who are employed. So if you remove them, then you will automatically get people who are actually unemployed. So the you will get unemployed. Now unemployment rate that you can get as a ratio of this unemployed people, total unemployed people, to the total labor force, okay, into 100 is nothing but the unemployment rate. So this is how you get that percentage of 8%. So first you will calculate labor force, then workforce. If you minus them, then you will get the unemployed, and then unemployed divided by labor force, or the ratio of people who are looking for job to that of labor force is into 100 is nothing but unemployment rate. And then finally labor force participation rate. So here you have to remember that labor force participation rate. So in the term itself, you know the labor force is there. So it is a ratio of labor force for the entire working age population of the country. So that means labor force participation rate refers to people who are in the working age group, that is 10 to 40, 20 to 45. This is a working age usually. So in that age, whoever are already employed or looking for employment is nothing but labor force participation rate. That means people who are ready to participate in the labor force. Whereas employment to population ratio deals with workforce, not labor force. That means who are already employed and with respect to working age population. That is employment to population ratio. And finally worker population ratio. Worker population, here population means entire population of the country. So with respect to worker, that is number of persons employed per 1,000 persons. These 1,000 persons are not just restricted to working age but the entire population. So this is worker population ratio. So try to remember these kind of terms, because if there is certain news, current news with respect to unemployment, usually UPSC doesn't focus on that, but ask these kind of terms or the concepts. So that is why I've mentioned these things. Okay. So if you are a bit confused, try to read them once again, but try to know the basic difference that labor force means already people who are employed and also looking for employment. Workforce means only who are right now in the employment. Try to remember at least this much. Okay. And then the few reports that are available with respect to unemployment are: the first one, periodic labor force report, that is basically published by NSSO. So that is recently started in 2019, and earlier there used to be an quarterly survey that is called employment and unemployment survey, like which is carried out for 5 years, every 5 years. That was now replaced, and PLFS is coming in place of that employment and unemployment survey. And then you have this government publishing another report, that is Central Statistical Office. Okay, CSO. Central Statistical Office publishes another report called payroll reporting measures. This payroll, as the name suggests, is basically on the records of EPFO, ESIC, and National Pension Scheme. So whoever are registering in the new category, they will take that names and then they'll say these are the employment figures. And then you have finally quarterly employment survey. And the unique thing is that this is basically published by Labor Bureau, that is Ministry of Labor, and it covers major 8 sectors that are manufacturing, construction, trade, transport, and education. And the another important feature is it even covers non-farm industrial sectors. So that is the important thing. That is why these two, especially the periodic labor force and quarterly employment survey, these two give a correct picture about how the unemployment is there in country. Okay. Okay. So now this is another important thing. This might be the first time you might be hearing this term Vaigai Valley civilization. This also we'll discuss now. So the fourth one, consider the following statements with respect to recently discovered Vaigai Valley civilization. First one, it is closely associated with Indus Valley civilization and belong to the same time period. Second one, Keladi excavations. Okay, Keladi are okay. Keladi it wouldn't be, so it will not be Keladi only. Keladi excavations, a hamlet near Madurai in Tamil Nadu, is a source which point out to this civilization discovery. And third thing, it acts as a source of archaeological evidence of Sangam age. So this is like a completely facts-based question. So if you know the facts, try to answer these kind of questions. If not, just leave this. Okay. So now we'll disclose the answer here. So basically here, the second option is anyway correct. So the first one is wrong here because Indus Valley civilization is the oldest civilization even now after this discovery. So that's why the first one is correct. First one is wrong, whereas 2 and 3 are correct. So the answer is B here. Okay. So now we'll see this in detail. So the first one, basically what happened is near Madurai, there was a place called Keladi. There they have unearthed some recent discoveries, which is pointing to an ancient civilization in the Megalithic period. So this they are calling as Vaigai Valley civilization. Why Vaigai? Because there is a river that flows just near to it called Vaigai River. So it is on that coast. And we also will know more about that Vaigai River. So basically, Indus Valley civilization, we call it because of Indus River. Similarly, we are calling it as Vaigai Valley civilization because of Vaigai River. But the difference is, this is kind of not as old as Indus Valley civilization. It is after Indus Valley civilization. So this is associated with a period called Megalithic period. So try to remember this. And this Megalithic period basically is associated with the start of Iron Age and is known to be transitionary period between prehistory and beginning of history. So what do you mean by prehistory and beginning of history? Prehistory is something related to before AD, that is BC, whereas history related to usually like prehistory is like before 10,000 BC, not even AD, like 10,000 BC before things, we call it as prehistory. So after that we call it as beginning of history. So this is somewhere in the middle or a transitional. So that's why it is a megalithic period. Megalith also means like large, mega means large burials. Like if people are buried in large kind of burials, like if thousands of people are buried in one place, those kind of activities we call megalithic. So with the stones and all, they'll be buried. So that's why this period is called megalithic period. So now we'll see part of this different ages, because this is also important. Sometimes they might ask which age is associated with which unique feature. So that's why I've mentioned some things here. Like if you see, as I said, prehistory is associated with 6 lakh years to 10,000 BC. In that first stage is Paleolithic age. Paleolithic age, you all know, humans have for the first time started using stones as the tools. So that's why we call it as early Stone Age. So here we use stones to basically manufacture all the tools like hard hand axe to blade and all to hunt basically. And then you have after Paleolithic, Mesolithic age or microlithic age. This is kind of late Stone Age where the stones became sharper. Earlier the stones were not that sharper, they were blunt. So now they were made more sharper and more small. So this is the period where even the rock cave paintings came in. Okay. And then you have Neolithic period. Neolithic is about from 7,000 to 3,000 BC. So this is just before Indus Valley civilization or near to that Indus Valley civilization, because in and around that 3000 BC itself, Indus Valley civilization started. So this is Neolithic age. So in this age, the unique feature is the tools are not only made of stone, but are also made of bones. And first time humans have invented a kind of tools like ceramics. Like if you know, in Indus Valley also you use certain gems like laplas and all. And then for the first time settled life and agriculture was started in Neolithic age. This also you have to know. Neolithic age is associated with domestication of animals and start of agriculture. And then after this Neolithic, then slowly copper and bronze were formed. So if you see here, the Harappan civilization mainly between the 3500 and 1300 BC. And then you have Neolithic age in South India. And in South India, this Neolithic age started a bit late. I mean, like from 2600 to 800 BC. So in this, basically iron was found. So in South India, the development was very slow. Whereas in Indus Valley area, if it was earlier only discovered, it was bit late in South India. So that's why in South India, still iron was the main thing that was used in Neolithic age. That's why, as I said, in this Vaigai Valley, which is after Indus Valley, is also associated with iron. Okay. And finally, the megalith. Megalith is between 1200 BC to 400 BC. So this is associated with two things: iron and black and red ware pottery. Okay, it is called as Iron Age in South India. So this is overall about the periods. Now we'll see the developments that happened in that excavations. So this Vaigai civilization is associated with Sangam age, because if you know this Sangam age, which you might have already read in history part, ancient history, is associated with Dravidian kingdom, that is Tamil Nadu. And this Sangam age basically happened between the same 1500 BC to around 400 AC, 400 AD. So this civilization is also associated with that period. So now Sangam age, usually we hear or read about it only from the Sangam literature. But for the first time, these excavations are proving that the Sangam age indeed existed. So archaeological evidences are being strongly reasoned through this excavations. So that is important. So that's why you also need to know a little bit about Sangam age. So here I have only mentioned important points, but if you get time, go to that ancient history and read again that Sangam age also, because there are certain different facts, like you have Pandyan kings, Chera kings, Chola kings at that time. There are certain flags associated with those kingdoms, and then you have certain capitals, and then you have port cities. So usually UPSC asks around these facts, like which are the port cities associated with which Sangam capital, and which literature was written by which author, or which literature talks about what, who are Alvars, who are Nayanars, all these things. So that's why try to once again revise that entire thing. But here I've mentioned some of the important things. Like the Tamil Sangam was an basically academy of poets who flourished in three different kingdoms in three different periods under patronage of Pandyan kings. And it is basically, the Sangam literature is basically from the third Sangam, that is third meet. And this talks about mainly secular matters that are related to public and social activities like government, war, charity, trade, everything. And then you have the important works that are, the first thing is Tolkappiyam. Okay. And then you have this Patu Pattu. Patu Pattu means 10 works, 10 poems. So remember like this: Patu means 10, Pattu means poems, 10 poems. And then you have Ettugai, Ettutogai. So that means about 8 anthologies, like 8 stories. And then you have 18 minor works that are called as Padini Kilkanakku. Okay. And then 3 epics. These 3 epics also you have to know. Like I remember in UPSC around 2017-18, there was a direct statement about one of the epic talking about Kannagi. So Kannagi was an important goddess in Tamil Nadu. Like there was a story associated with it. So they have directly asked that. So try to know a bit more about Sangam. So now coming back to the Vaigai river. So as this site was found near Vaigai, you also need to know that Vaigai is an not west flowing river but an east flowing river. So it starts in Kerala and then it flows through Tamil Nadu and then goes and joins the Bay of Bengal. And it is an important basin among 12 basins between Kaveri and Kanyakumari. And it is basically bounded by Cardamom Hills and Palani Hills on the west, and the Park Strait and Park Bay on the east. So this is kind of location about that river. Then the key findings. The key findings are, the first thing, it suggests that the second urbanization after Indus Valley civilization is found in this plains. So this is very important from urban. So another urban city was found. Second thing, the skeletal fragments say that there is a kind of domestication of animals happened in this site. And then there were certain pottery was also found, showing that black and red ware was used, and it also showing that it was used for certain cooking vessels and all. So that shows that the civilization was broadly like sophisticated and well developed. And then the Tamil Brahmi script was also found in that. So showing high literacy level, and also shows that it is associated with Sangam age. So these are the key findings of that exhibition. And this exhibition is very, very important for this year because this is the first time we got certain important site. So it might be asked from the point of view of art and culture. That is why uh, I'm discussing this in detail. So I'll also share these notes, and you also try to know more in detail about this thing, like this period. So there might be some question somewhere in this area, like either about the periods or the findings or how it is related with Sangam. So then they might ask on Sangam. Okay, so now we'll see the fifth topic. So the consider the following statements with respect to insurance cover for deposits in Indian financial system. So first one, the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation (DICGC) provides for insurance cover of rupees 1 lakh per depositor. And second one, the DICGC cover does apply to both banks and non-banking financial companies. Third one, the customers have flexibility to avail higher insurance amount on their deposits by paying additional premium to the DICGC. So now this is kind of both fixed static part, facts, and bit of analysis where you can apply and deduct the answer. So try to mark your answer, and then we will see like how we can apply that analysis, and then we'll see the right answer for this. So the first thing is here, you might get a suspicion with the third statement. Okay, so here I'm saying the customers should have the flexibility to avail higher insurance premium. So you might all have an account. So have you ever found any option where you can pay an insurance by which, or a premium by which you can get more insurance for your deposit? So basically this deals with the deposit insurance. That means if you have 2 lakhs in your account, how much you can cover if suppose that banks gets dissolved or banks goes into insolvency. So that is deposit insurance. So have you ever got an option in net banking or anywhere? So that is not there. That means the third option is wrong here. Okay. And the second one, this is also wrong because so far DICGC covers only banks, not NBFCs. So second one is also wrong. So only the correct answer is the first one. That is, it covers only up to 1 lakh per depositor. So even if you have 10 lakhs in your bank account, and if your banks goes into bankruptcy, then you will get back only an insured amount of 1 lakh. Rest, it depends on how the insolvency goes. If the insolvency good, then you might get some amount. If not, you will get only that 1 lakh out of 10 lakhs. So that is the important thing. So here the right answer is A1 only. And next thing, why this question came in? This question came in because we have certain context. First thing, you all know that Punjab and Maharashtra Cooperative Bank has failed. And this was a big news. And the big news also because there was a controversy because RBI imposed certain limit. Okay, that is first thing. And many depositors were unable to get more than their deposit insurance. And third thing, there was a bill introduced in 2017, but that news was in 2018 and 19 also. That is financial resolution and deposit insurance. So this bill basically did two things. One, it expanded this insurance deposit cover to even NBFCs, which is not there now. Second thing, it also said if suppose a bank goes into kind of bankruptcy, then the depositors' money will be used to further resolution. So that's why many people started protesting, and finally bill didn't get passed. So that's why this was in news. So now we'll see in detail about how Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation works. So basically this is a kind of insurance cover for 1 lakh, up to 1 lakh for depositors, and it covers majorly commercial banks, regional rural banks, local area banks, and cooperative banks. That means it doesn't cover the, yeah, it covers both even private banks as well. Okay. And second thing, the premium for this is usually paid by the banks, not by the depositor. Okay. So it is the banks that pay. And the third thing, this insurance scheme doesn't cover NBFCs. That is very important, you have to know, because this is the condition that usually UPSC gives. One, the depositor doesn't pay. Second, it doesn't cover NBFCs. Okay. And third thing, it covers only up to 1 lakh. And then customers doesn't have any flexibility to avail higher insurance amount by paying premium. This is because many other countries have this kind of system. So like when I worked for a client. Similarly, there was a client in UK called FRCS. So they also kind of organization on similar lines of this DICGC. There you have many options. Like you can extend the cover from 1 lakh to, like they have in pounds, so they can extend from 1 lakh to 10 lakhs based on how much you are willing to pay for the insurance. So that's kind of mechanism was there, but it is not there in India. And the third thing, insurance is like not available when the freeze is there. Like for example, in PMC, what happened? They didn't resolve the bank. I mean, the bank didn't go to bankruptcy, or the bank didn't function normally. Instead, RBI imposed certain kind of restrictions called freezing the accounts. That means you neither can't withdraw nor can deposit. So at that time, usually this deposit insurance will not apply. So these are kind of certain things that are limitations on this bill. So like these points you can even use in your mains answer if they ask like what are the challenges, kind of these things. Okay, so this is about deposit insurance and credit guarantee corporation. Like yes, this is another information, like it covers all the bank deposits, certain savings, fixed, current, recurring, everything. And it also covers both but it doesn't cover the following things. These are the things that it doesn't cover. Like it doesn't cover deposits of foreign governments, it doesn't cover deposits of central and state governments, interbank deposits, and then state land development banks, and any amount deposited or withdrew from outside India, and then corporations without the approval of RBI. So in these cases, it won't apply. So this also you have to remember. Rest of in all cases, it will apply. Okay. So now having done that, we'll see the sixth topic. So this is related to telecom sector, and this is constantly news. So like yesterday or today also there was in business page that Vodafone and Bharti Airtel were unable to pay this AGR dues. Okay, so this is very, very important for this year because this is a significant Supreme Court judgment came on this. So part of that, this question. So consider the following statements with respect to different revenues from telecom sector. First one, government received or government receives revenue from telecom service providers or operators in two components. One is revenue, that is income from sales of service to the government as license fee. And second is spectrum usage fee or spectrum usage charge. So this is first one. Second thing, adjusted gross revenue as per recent Supreme Court should include all revenue earned by a service provider, including that emanating from non-core sources such as rent, profit on sale of fixed assets. So these are the two statements. So this is pretty easy. Like if you are following the news and if you have read, then you can easily mark, and this is also not tricky. So here again, if you have marked the answer, then we'll disclose it. So here again, the answer is basically A, both 1 and 2. So here again kept both the statements as correct. And this was the contention actually regarding the second statement. Like adjusted gross revenue is the major bit of controversy between the parties, because government is saying that whatever the revenue is there, that should include all the sources of telecom sector. That is including even the other core services, non-core services. That is like if suppose Airtel has a certain land, or it is suppose developing an asset in Hyderabad, there is big mall of Airtel and it is using for revenue. And if it is getting revenue in that asset, then there also revenue will be calculated for government. But Airtel company says that is not part of the revenue, that is only an other source. So please consider only telecom sales or telecom charges, data charges, only those things. So this is a kind of controversy it came in. And then finally, when they went to Supreme Court said like there is nothing doing, like you have to pay for every source of income. Like if you are a telecom operator, you are able to get that asset because of only telecom provision of services. So that's why every source of income will be considered for this is adjusted gross revenue. And then so finally, the companies now have to pay about 1.42 lakh crores to the government. So that is a very big amount. And this telecom sector is right now under big stress. So that's why this is very important news. So now we'll see different aspects like how from where the government gets revenue from telecom sector. So basically, this is a context like Supreme Court has said that adjusted gross revenue should include all the revenues even from non-core sources. That will force private players to pay about 1.4 lakh crore. And already the telecom sector is in debt of about 4 lakh crore. So if they have to pay this, then many companies will go bankruptcy. And finally, only Reliance Jio will be there. So that is the kind of effect it might have. And then first thing we'll see what is the source of revenue. So basically, part of this, you also need to know about TRAI. Okay, there is Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. That is very, very important. So try to know a bit about it, like whether it is a statutory body or not. And there is also Telecom Appellate Tribunal. So that also you have to know, TSAT. So under which this appellate goes, whether that is statutory or not. So these two things are important: TRAI and TSAT, Appellate Tribunal. So part of that, so telecom government gets basically revenue in two components. One, that is directly in the form of license fee. That is 8% of the revenue of this telecom operators. For example, Airtel, Jio, or anyone is there, and if they are providing some service, and if they are getting revenue of 100 crores, then straight away 8% of that will be deducted as license fee. Okay. Second thing, government will also allocate certain spectrum. So that spectrum usage charges also will be levied. That is about 3 to 5% of the revenue. So these are the two components. So now the problem is about how to calculate this adjusted gross revenue, because government says all the revenue that is earned by the service provider, that right from rent, profit, on sale of corporate deposits, if they are getting interest. For example, Airtel money is there, so if some people are depositing in that, and if Airtel is getting money income in that, even that should be calculated as revenue according to the government. But Airtel says no, you shouldn't. So finally it is settled that because of Supreme Court, that everything should be calculated now. So this is adjusted gross revenue. Always remember, because of the Supreme Court judgment, now adjusted gross revenue means everything: non-core services revenue and core services revenue. So now we finish that. Then you have another component called Universal Service Obligation Fund. This is very important, because this fund is basically used by the government to provide universal non-discriminatory access to quality ICT services to all the people in rural and remote areas. Like if you know this program BharatNet, that is basically funded by this USOF. BharatNet, you all know, I guess. It is about providing broadband to all the village panchayats in country. So that is part of Digital India. So how you are getting the money? That money you are getting basically by this fund. So this is a kind of cess or a tax that is imposed on these telecom operators, because they usually focus their infrastructure only in urban cities or in areas where they get income. They might not focus on rural areas. So government is imposing another tax called this Universal Service Obligation fee, and uses that to provide the infrastructure in rural villages. So that is the importance of this. And it is a non-lapsable fund, and the unspent, that is the unspent amount under this will not lapse and is goes for the next year. And this fund, all credits will be under statutory support under Indian Telegraph Act. Okay. So remember that this USOF is a non-lapsable fund. Okay. And then you have another important development in telecom sector, that is 5G. So like you need to know different aspects, like different important features of 5G. So that is basically the first thing, ultra low latency. So this is a term you have to know. What is ultra low latency? That means, latency means basically uh, the transmission speed. Like it's not just the transmission speed but the response. Like for example, in 4G and all, the ultra latency is in the seconds, but in with respect to 5G, it is in less than 0.01 some milliseconds. That means the moment you pass the information, there will not be any latency, that is there will not be any delay, immediately you will get. And what is the significance of this? Because you have ultra low latency, you can for the first time utilize 5G for certain areas like driverless cars. For example, driverless cars is there. There, the driverless car works based on certain cameras, because cameras see the road and then they input the system to the AI. And if there is even 1 second delay in the transmission, then there might be a clash. So to avoid that, 5G will help, because 5G has ultra low latency. That means almost there is negligible delay. So you will get real-time information. So only when you get real-time information from that cameras on the driverless cars, only then actions can be taken. So the processing will be very fast. So this is kind of one case scenario because of 5G. So this is an example. So that's how 5G can enable many things which are not possible till now. Like for example, this geo-launched class, or this real-time monitoring, everything can be enabled. One of the feature is ultra low latency. Second thing, high speeds. Like for example, you can see right now the download speed can be like increased up to 1 Gbps, which is about 100 times that of the 4G. Okay, so that is very important. The speed rate is very high. Ultra low latency, second thing high speed, and also third thing the battery energy efficiency, right from the transmitter and also the receiver. The receiver is here cell phones and all. The transmitter energy efficiency and the receiver energy efficiency both can be improved. And then you have wider area in the frequency spectrum. This is also very important because in this 5G uses higher range, that is about gigahertz, 3 gigahertz or something. Because of that, it will be able to connect to many devices, so it can cover many devices. So that is another important feature. So because of this, the use cases are many. So like industrial revolution 4.0, internet of things, all this can be enabled by 5G. That is the importance of 5G. And then you can see the different evolution. So like the first thing, 1G, that is first generation, was launched in 1980, and this worked basically on analog radio signals, and it supported only voice calls. There is no data. That is why it is called first generation. Then you have second generation, that is was launched in 1990, and for the first time in 2G, both voice and data transmission were there, but the speed was only up to 64 kbps. If you remember, at that time only images we were able to download and see. And then 3G came. With 3G, the speed increased. It was launched in 2000, and the speed was increased from 1 mbps to 2 mbps. And that is where you have started all the WhatsApp calls and all. And then you have finally 4G recently. Right now, it is almost there in entire country. So right now, the speed is up to 1 Gbps, and it enables 3D virtual reality also. Now we are going to have 5G by 2021 in India. It's already started in South Korea and US. This also you need to know. South Korea, Taiwan, and US. In India, the spectrum allocation is going to happen in 2021. And then, as we discussed all this, there are certain topics you have to focus. That is BharatNet project. This you have to know what are the components, because in BharatNet there is also a program called Digital Sakshakarat Bharat, something like this name. So where they provide literacy also, that is digital literacy program in English, where part of BharatNet, not only they provide the internet bandwidth to the village panchayats, but they will also reskill the people, village like rural people. They will reskill them in digital technologies. They will explain them, or they will make them learn how to use the digital technologies. And you have these common service centers. This is also very important. This also established under this Digital India scheme. So all of this you have to see. And then you have National Electronics Policy. This is also formulated to aid this 5G. So you are going to manufacture many of these semiconductors and all. So what are the incentives that are given under this scheme? This you have to know. And then you have National Telecom Policy directly related with 5G. So you have to know this features of National Telecom Policy also. So try to do certain kind of go through these issues. Okay. So this is the difference. Like if you see, left side is 4G and right side you have 5G. Latency for 4G is 10 milliseconds. For latency for 5G is less than 1 millisecond. That is very, very less. So around 0.01 or something it is. And then you have data traffic, like you can see that. And then speed, like up to 1 GB. Here it is up to 20 GB. And spectrum, this is important. Like if you see in the 4G, it is 3 gigahertz. But for the 5G, it is 30 gigahertz. And then in connection density also, you only have 100,000. That is 1 lakh up to. But here you have 10 lakh connections. So that is the important like significant development over 5G. So try to remember this one or two three things, like ultra low latency, high speed, spectrum range. So if these things you can remember, there might be some question about 5G this year. Okay, because this is the most hot topic right now in the science and technology field. So this is the last additional topic we'll just discuss, because this is came up in news. So, and every other month there will be something about Hindustani classical music. So this forms part of your Indian art and culture. And yes, so basically Hindustani classical music is influenced basically from ancient Hindu musical tradition and Vedic philosophy, but also certain Persian elements have been involved also in this. This is basically because Hindustani classical music is more flexible, unlike Carnatic music. So you also need to know the difference between Hindustani music and Carnatic music, because Carnatic music doesn't have these kind of changes because it is so rigid. It has certain rules, certain laws where you can't change, like how the raga should be there and all. Whereas in Hindustani it is more flexible. That is why certain Persian elements were also included, and the music got developed. So that also you need to know. And the major vocal forms that are there in Hindustani classical music are Drupad, Khayal, Tumri, Tappa, and Tharana. So these things you have to remember. Like you need to know what are these things, because last year, like in previous years, there was a question on this Drupad, and once there was a question on Khayal. Okay, so here I've included about Drupad, but also try to know the other things like Khayal and Tumri, Tappa, and Tharana. So Drupad is basically performed by men with these musical instruments, tanpura and pakawaj, and then these are like medieval form of Hindi. Okay, so these are certain important facts.